My name is Kimberly Larkin, and I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. Up until this year, I've been a student at Davidson College in Davidson, North Carolina. And while I was there, I did an undergraduate thesis on post-genocide justice and memory construction in Rwanda. And so I'd done a lot of research already on Central Africa, on justice and reconciliation, on the politics of how we talk about things in the past, so memory construction. I'd gone to Rwanda and done some research, that sort of a thing, and it was that research, in addition to a year I spent studying in Paris, that led me to come to Belgium. I originally visited Brussels while I was studying in Paris at Sciences Po, and I had read about, in a Lonely Planet travel guide, the Royal Museum of Central Africa, and so I went out and visited it. It's out in Tervuren, which is one of the suburbs of Brussels, and was honestly kind of offended by how they presented colonialism and didn't present colonialism. There's a lot of stuffed lions and stuffed elephants and things about the glorious colonial past of Belgium without anything problematizing what had gone on during the colonial era, which was a fairly murderous one for Congo. And was upset about what I had seen there. Talked to a professor I had been working with in Antwerp who told me that if I was so angry about it, I should do something about it. And he said that there was a renovation project going on at the museum currently, and that they were looking for researchers and interns to help with that project. And so that's initially what sparked my interest in coming back to Europe for another year and working with the museum, which up until this point has been a wonderful experience. I'm actually going to be writing my master's thesis on the renovation process and the ethical problems inside, that particular process represents in terms of the rewriting of that kind of collective traumatic memory. And I'm also getting to edit some manuscripts on, or monographs on particular regions of DRC that are critical and about which we know very little at this point. So it's been a great experience, but originally that was what sparked my interest in Belgium in particular. It was the colonial history and the opportunity at the museum. Well, I think in terms of research in European institutions, and I found this in both France and Belgium, though the museum is wonderful about allowing access to archives. If you're dealing with national archives, there's potentially more paperwork than you might expect for an American archive, so that's just something to be aware of, that there's a few more diplomatic paperwork hoops to jump through if you want to get your hands on some really interesting things. It's usually worth it. And that said, particular institutions like the RMCA, the museum, are very willing to work with researchers and very willing to work with students. I've been very impressed with them. In terms of studying, I think it very much depends, just like in the States, on the personality of the institution you're at as much as the personality of the country. I think France and Belgium have decidedly different personalities as countries. And the university I studied in, or the institute I studied in Paris, which is the Institut des études politiques Sciences Po, is a very different kind of school than Université Libre de Bruxelles, than ULB. It's the difference between a large public university with a wide diversity of students and subject matters and a small institute focused very narrowly on politics and international diplomacy. So there's certainly differences there, but I don't know that that's comparing apples and oranges entirely. So I think that the experience of living in a European Francophone city, one of the big capitals of Europe, and getting to study is absolutely one that if you have the opportunity to do, you shouldn't miss. Between the two of them, I think that Brussels in general tends to be a much more relaxed city. It tends to be a profoundly diverse city in terms of the kinds of people you meet, the places they come from. It's a very, very international place with a very, very variegated kind of identity. And I find that really fun. I find that really interesting, and it's a great environment to study in. I secured letters of affiliation from the museum and from one of the researchers who's interested in things that I'm interested in at ULB. That was a very smooth process. That part of the application process was not particularly difficult, and I've been very fortunate to have people very interested in some of these topics and what I've been doing as a thesis. Securing the final inscription and registration at ULB was a little more challenging. I think it's good to be aware of the fact that your documents and your diplomas and your transcripts don't necessarily translate very well if you're not studying at a European university. If you have American documents and transcripts, it's good to be aware of the fact that you need to start very early, and you probably need to provide translations and the copies in triplicate and hard copies to the university, and then just have a lot of patience and understanding for how large at least ULB is and how many students they're processing, how difficult that process is. Ultimately, I was able to get registered the first week I was here, which was kind of a miracle. And again, I was very fortunate, but it did take a lot of work and a lot of patience during the summer, basically for 3 months, just kind of persistently communicating with them and patiently communicating with them. It's good to be aware that if you're obtaining a visa without the official Fulbright letter, but you still have a scholarship that's funding you, you're going to need either a work permit from an institution where you're interning, which is very time-consuming to get, or you're going to need a letter of admission from a university. And in order to get that letter of admission, you need to, again, start early and have a lot of documents, because it can take a long time and it can be very exciting. I'm intending to finish my master's at ULB. It's a 2-year program, so I'm intending on staying on another year and finishing my thesis and getting my master's degree. I really do enjoy living, working, and studying in Belgium, and in Brussels in particular. And after that, I intend to go to law school. I want to work in public international law, and so more years of school and then hopefully a career in human rights law.